on your way to church?
Amen.
It's like, it's like, oh my God, Jesus, man, what is going on? My God, you get to church and say, how you doing?
I think that's Christian tradition. I remember my parents doing that as Christian tradition.
So here's a couple principles that I've taught in my coaching academy and negotiations that it's absolutely biblically grounded. I have some verses there. The first one, it's all about relationship. When I'm working with the coaches and I'm thinking about just being with people, I think like it's all about relationship. That's rule number one. Rule number two is refer to rule number one, right? Because if it's not about relationship, what the tendency is as a human to want your own way, to be right about what you want to be right about. You go over into the corner and you protect your little corner, right? You know, and then your spouse is in the other corner protecting her corner. You're both trying to be right, you know. And where is all the possibility? In the middle of the room, right? In negotiation, they call that the zone of possible agreement. And so, but what's scary about stepping out in the middle of the room and being okay with maybe your position is awkward, not right, or it's just not resourceful, is that there's uncertainty when you go into that conversation. And just look at, you know, how many arguments happen in the Bible, right? And they all work. They got through it, you know. And so we're here, and we get to like practice that too, being okay in the uncertainty. And so what helps you in the middle of, I know when Karen and I are having debate, I know like, okay, there's no question, we've actually said in the middle of being angry at each other, okay, I know we love each other, but we can't get through this. Like, so we go back to home base. It says we're committed to each other, we love each other, and somehow we're having an argument. So that gets us to principle number two, which is hard on the problem, easy on the person.
Wow.
This actually goes back to this is definitely biblical. A guy who was biblical created this and called the Harvard Negotiation Plan back in the 1970s, Bill Urey. And he says one of the principles is to be hard on the problem and easy on the person. But you notice how most people just break down hard on the person, you try to destroy the person,
right.
and does the problem get solved?
No.
No, it doesn't. So if you know that a person knows that like you're for them and you're both against the problem. So
No.
I might ask Karen a simple question, right? Going back to page one in the front, like the question that was first. Well, I might say, how can we together solve this problem? And that's the problem. You know, we're after the problem. And then we release out of that tension.
We're both on the same side instead of against each other.
Yeah, and think about when things aren't working that you want to get behind the shield of your spouse. So you want to, this is where we're talking about what are the special words, what are the senses that you use, is that your questions help you frame it from their perspective. So I might say, well, Karen, would you help me understand what's not working? You know, just help me understand what's not working. So I actually, let me look at it from her perspective behind her shield and help me understand what she's seeing. Because if I could see what she's seeing or imagine, because I really can't see what she's seeing, right? But if I can imagine what it would look like, then it's like gives me access to a different possibility. As opposed to me saying like, what's wrong? Don't you see it my way? Right? You notice how that's, and so this is how this language and understand. So let me, you know, we did it one time where it's okay, let me just imagine I'm very visually oriented and look at the kitchen. Oh my God, what a mess. Right? But I didn't notice it because I was auditory. So that's principle number two, being hard on the problem, easy on the person. Now here is, we're just going to turn to my easel. So I come up with the 4 C's, which will help you maneuver through difficult conversations, or even just to get to know somebody that you never knew before. And so the first C up there is called curious. And we're going to work through those 4 C's, and really it's listening for what's wanted and needed to move forward. So I could have added some more words. So what's wanted and needed to move forward. And the first is curious. Now who can, because I don't have the Bible here in front of me, who can speak out or read Matthew 18, 2-4.
Then Jesus called a little child to him, set him in the midst of them, and said, Surely I say to you, unless you are converted and become as little children, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Verse 4. Therefore, whosoever humbles himself as this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven.
It's awesome. And I was thinking, like, I just really struggled with that verse for a long time. I said, why do I want to be a little child? You know, like, yeah, what, you know, I'm an adult, right? Doesn't Apostle Paul say we need, you know, have to get off milk? You know, that's a little bit. And I'm thinking, okay, let me just think about this. You know, what are children like? You know, now we're not talking about them being like spoiled and being like, you know, wanting their way. You know, not that adults ever want their way. But he's thinking about what a child. They're really curious. They're actually the best negotiators, right?
Yes.
They get up on your lap and say, "Can I have a piece of candy? Can I have a piece of candy?" You know, like they keep at you, and they're great. And also, you know what? They're masters of the obvious, which as adults we start with that. How come that person is hurting, Daddy? You know, they notice that. What if we were like curious that way toward God, but also toward the people that God put in front of us?
Wow.
Just being curious. And somehow, because we've got to be adults, that gets pounded out of us as we get older. As opposed to like, wow, Jesus is telling us to be curious, to be transparent, to look for the obvious as a child would. So that's the first C. What's the Proverbs 16:24? Who can read that one?
Pleasant words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the bone.
Amen. Amen. And so the second C is character.